When I left my wife at 52, I thought I'd lose my kids. I thought they'd see me as the man who broke up the family, the selfish one, the failure. I braced myself for judgment, disappointment, maybe even years of silence. But something unexpected happened, something nobody warned me about. My relationship with my adult children didn't just survive the divorce, it got stronger. And today, 3 years later, they respect me in ways they never did during my 27-year marriage. This isn't what I expected. It is not what anyone tells you, but it is the truth. And if you are considering divorce after 50 and terrified of losing your kids, you need to hear this story. Stay with me. Introduction: the fear. Before I tell you why my kids respect me more now, I need to be honest about the fear. When you are contemplating divorce at 50-something, especially when you have adult children, the biggest terror isn't the finances. It is not starting over. It is not even the loneliness. It is this: what will my kids think of me? You imagine the conversation. You imagine their faces. You imagine being the man who gave up, who broke his vows, who destroyed the family they grew up in. You imagine them choosing sides, and you know, statistically, they'll probably choose their mother. You imagine holidays where you are not invited, grandkids you don't get to see, a lifetime of being the outsider in your own family. That fear almost kept me in the marriage. For years it kept me there. But here is what actually happened when I finally left at 52, and it wasn't what I expected at all. Part 1. The immediate aftermath. I am not going to lie. The first few months were hard. I told my 3 kids individually. My oldest daughter was 26, my son was 24, my youngest was 21, and their immediate reactions were exactly what I feared. Shock, confusion, some anger. Questions I didn't have good answers for. Why now, after all these years? Couldn't you have tried harder? Thought of us. My middle son was especially angry. He saw his childhood differently than I did. To him, we seemed fine. Happy even. He felt betrayed that I was rewriting the story he believed was true. My youngest daughter cried, not because she wanted us together, but because it confirmed something she'd sensed for years, that the happiness was performed, not real. My oldest stayed quiet. Processing those first few months, our conversations were stiff, careful, like we were all walking on eggshells around a truth we weren't ready to face yet. But then, slowly, something started to shift. Part 2, they started seeing me as a person here, is what changed everything. For the first time in their lives, my kids started seeing me as a person, not just dad. During the marriage, I was a role. The provider, the problem solver, the steady one, the man who held everything together and never complained. I was strong, reliable, functional, but I was never quite human. After the divorce, that changed. I wasn't living in the big house anymore. I was in a small apartment, rebuilding, figuring things out, visibly struggling sometimes, admitting I didn't have all the answers. And instead of losing their respect, I gained it. My oldest daughter told me later, "Dad, I never knew you actually had feelings. You were always so controlled, so there, but I never knew what you wanted or what made you happy. I never thought about you as someone with your own life." That hit me hard. I'd spent decades being strong for them, but in being strong, I'd become invisible as a person. After the divorce, I couldn't hide anymore. They saw me choosing myself. They saw me admitting the marriage wasn't working. They saw me prioritizing my own peace and mental health. And for adult children, especially in their 20s, trying to figure out their own lives, that was permission. Permission to be honest, permission to choose themselves, permission to admit when something isn't working instead of just enduring. I became real to them, and real earned more respect than perfect ever did. Part 3, they understood more than I thought. Here is something else I didn't expect. They'd already seen the cracks. I thought I'd hidden the unhappiness. I thought we'd kept up the facade well enough that the kids wouldn't know. But my youngest told me, "Dad, we knew. Maybe not the details, but we knew you weren't happy. We could feel the tension. We saw how you'd go quiet at dinner, how you worked late to avoid coming home, how you and Mum barely talked anymore." My son said, I was angry at first because you shattered the illusion. But I was more angry that you both kept pretending for so long, like we couldn't handle the truth. Adult children aren't stupid. They see more than we think. They feel the energy in a home. And here is the hard truth staying in a dead marriage. For the kids, when the kids are adults, isn't protecting them. It is lying to them. When I left, I stopped lying. I stopped pretending. I stopped modeling a version of manhood that says endure misery in silence and call it strength. And they respected that honesty more than they ever respected the performance. Before I tell you what our relationship looks like now, and why I believe leaving actually made me a better father, I need you to do something. If you are a man over 50 navigating divorce or considering it, and you are terrified of what it will do to your relationship with your kids, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel tells the real stories, the complex truths, the outcomes nobody warns you about. Every subscription helps this reach more fathers who need to know they can survive this and maybe even thrive. Subscribe now, hit that like button, and let me show you what happened next. Part 4. I became a better father after divorce. This is the most counterintuitive part, but it is true. I am a better father now than I was during the marriage. Not because I provide more. I actually provide less. They're adults. They don't need my money anymore, but I am present in ways I never was before, during the marriage. Every interaction with my kids was filtered through the tension of the marriage. Family dinners were performances, holidays were stressful obligations, conversations were surface level because I couldn't be vulnerable about my own life now. I actually know my kids, and they actually know me. We have real conversations about their relationships, their careers, their struggles. And I can be honest about mine. I can tell them when I am struggling. I can ask for their perspective. I can be mentored by them in areas where they're wiser than me. My relationship with each of them is individual now, not mediated through their mother, not part of family dynamics. Just one human connection. My oldest and I hike together monthly. We talk about her career, her relationship, her life goals, and I can be honest about mine. My son and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. He needed time to process his anger, but now we have coffee every few weeks, and he tells me he understands why I left. He sees his own relationship differently because of it. My youngest is my biggest champion. She tells her friends I am the bravest person she knows, not because I am strong, but because I chose authenticity over comfort. I am not a perfect father, but I am a real one, and real connection beats perfect performance every time. Part 5. What they learned from my choice here is what I didn't anticipate. My divorce became a teaching moment. Not, divorce is always right. But choosing yourself matters. My oldest daughter was in an unhappy relationship when I left. She'd been staying because it was comfortable, because leaving felt like failure, because she didn't want to hurt him. 6 months after my divorce, she ended it, she told me. Watching you choose yourself gave me permission to do the same. You taught me that staying in something that makes you smaller isn't noble. It is just slow death. My son learned that strength isn't endurance of misery. It is honesty about what you need and the courage to pursue it even when it is hard. My youngest learned that she doesn't owe anyone her happiness, that her life is hers to live. I didn't plan to teach those lessons, but living them, actually choosing myself after 27 years of choosing everyone else, taught more than any lecture ever could. They respect me because I showed them that it is never too late to choose authenticity, that you don't have to endure forever, that your peace matters. Now, I need to be honest. Not every story ends this way. I've talked to men whose kids never forgave them, men whose relationships with their children were destroyed by divorce, men who became estranged from their families. So what made the difference for me? 3 things. 1. I never badmouthed their mother, even when they asked, even when I was hurt. I kept the adult problems between the adults too. I was honest without being manipulative. I didn't try to get them on my side. I just told my truth when they asked and let them process it however they needed to. 3. I gave them space. I didn't demand they understand immediately. I didn't force relationship. I just stayed available, stayed consistent, and let them come to their own conclusions. But here is the biggest factor. My kids were adults. 21, 24, 26, old enough to understand complexity. Old enough to see their parents as people. If they'd been 8, 10, 12, this story might be very different. So here is what I want you to understand. The fear of losing your kid. It is one of the most powerful forces keeping men in dead marriages. But here is what nobody tells you. Sometimes, leaving makes you more accessible as a human being, more honest as a role model, more real as a father. My kids don't respect me despite the divorce. They respect me because of what the divorce revealed, that I am human, that I have needs, that I value my own peace enough to choose it even when it is hard. That doesn't mean divorce is always right. That doesn't mean you won't lose relationships in the process. But it means the fear of my kids will hate me forever isn't always true. Sometimes, adult children surprise you. Sometimes, they're waiting for you to be honest. Sometimes, your authenticity gives them permission to live authentically too. 3 years later, my relationship with my kids is the strongest it has ever been. Not because I am a perfect father, but because I am finally a real one. Now here is what I need from you. First, subscribe to this channel. Right now, because every week I am telling the real, complex, unexpected stories of life after 50 divorce. Solitude, rebuilding, relationships, the outcomes nobody warns you about. Good. These aren't fantasy stories. These are real lives. And if you are navigating this terrain, you need to know you are not alone, and the outcomes aren't always what you fear. Subscribe now. Don't miss another story. Second, hit that like button. That like tells YouTube that complex, honest stories matter, that fathers navigating divorce deserve real content, not just surface-level advice. Your like determines whether this story reaches the father who is sitting alone right now, terrified. His kids will never forgive him. Third, comment below with your honest experience. If you are divorced, how did it affect your relationship with your kids? Did it improve, worsen, or complicate? If you are considering divorce, what is your biggest fear about how your kids will react? If you are an adult child of divorce, what do you wish your father had known or done differently? Your honest comments create community, and that community is one of the most powerful resources for men navigating this. Fourth, share this with someone who needs it. The father terrified of leaving because of his kids. The man who thinks divorce means losing his family forever. The divorced dad who is struggling to rebuild those relationships. Send them this video. You might give them the hope or perspective they desperately need. Here is the bigger picture. This video was about my specific outcome with my kids. But the deeper truth is this: you cannot control how your children will react to your choices. You can only control the integrity with which you make those choices and the honesty with which you communicate them. Some kids will understand immediately, some will take years. Some may never fully forgive. But here is what you can control: being honest, being available, being consistent, and being human. That is what I did. And 3 years later, my kids respect me more than they did when I was performing strength and hiding misery. Would they respect me even more if I'd stayed? I don't think so, because staying would have meant continuing to model that your own peace doesn't matter, that endurance is more important than authenticity, that you should sacrifice yourself indefinitely for others, and I don't want my kids living that way, so I couldn't model it anymore. Subscribe, like, comment, share. And if you are terrified of how divorce will affect your relationship with your kids, know this: the outcome isn't predetermined. It is not always loss. Sometimes, it is the beginning of a more honest, more real, more respectful relationship than you ever had before. That has been my story. It might be yours too. I'll see you in the next one.